Okay, I'd now like to invite up onto stage Sev from Domain in Australia. Sev Thomassian is the Chief Strategy and Corporate Development Officer for Domain. He's going to talk about how Domain is building the next-gen marketplace. So Sev, thank you very much for presenting today.
Thank you, Simon. And thank you, everyone. So, can anyone guess where these two photos are taken? Both photos are taken in Fifth Avenue, New York. Now, you're probably thinking Fifth Avenue, New York looks a little bit different today. So can you guess when these photos were taken? Both photos were taken on Easter Monday. The one on the left was taken in 1900, and the one on the right was taken in 1913. Now, can you see what's different about these two photos? Have a look at the red circle on the photo on the left. That's one car in a street full of horses pulling carts. Now take a look at the red circle on the photo on the right. That's one horse left on a street full of cars. So in 13 short years, technology had completely transformed transportation. I'm going to make one main point today, but the implications are numerous. While we tend to overestimate the effect of technology in the short term, we underestimate the effect in the long term. Hi everyone, my name's Sev Thomassian. I'm the Chief Strategy and Corporate Development Officer at Domain Group. For those of you unfamiliar with Domain, our genesis is the property classified section of some of Australia's best known newspapers. Over time, we've evolved to become a leading Australian property marketplace. We're listed on the Australian Stock Exchange and have a market cap over $2 billion. Now, I'm going to take you from New York in the early 1900s to the other side of the world, Sydney, Australia, on the 29th of September 1996. You're probably wondering what's special about that day. It was the Australian Rugby League Grand Final. Rugby League and the Grand Final is a little bit like the US Super Bowl, but there's two important differences. The first is in Rugby League you pass a football backwards. In the Super Bowl you pass it forwards. And then secondly, unlike the Super Bowl, Rugby League just isn't that popular. Most of you probably never heard of it, and even in Australia they only really play it in 2 of Australia's 6 states. But teenage me was incredibly excited because my team, the Manly Warringah Seagulls, were playing in the Grand Final for the Premiership. And there's nothing more than I wanted than to buy a jersey for the game. Unfortunately, one problem stood in my way, and that was the retail industry in the 1990s. I got my dad to drive me down to the local sports store, but they'd completely sold out of jerseys. I begged him, and he drove me to 2 more stores, but they'd sold out too. So in the end, I gave up. I found a red shirt in my wardrobe, which was the closest colour I could find to the maroon jersey. Now, my team won the grand final that day, but consumers and the retail industry lost. Times have changed since then. Retail marketplaces have been built. So last year when I took my son to his first Manly game, I went on my phone, I scrolled through some different jersey options, I chose one at the lowest price from multiple sellers, and I had it delivered to my doorstep in time for the game. Now, the retail industry hasn't just solved consumer frictions over time. They've solved broader industry frictions for other industry participants too. They've solved channel access for third-party manufacturers and wholesalers. They've solved fulfillment, platform infrastructure, payment solutions, and cloud storage. Why have they done that? And the answer is it's incredibly profitable. Amazon has a market cap of 1.8 trillion US dollars. That's far, far greater than the market cap of any traditional retailer just looking at consumer frictions. Now, compared to the retail industry, the property industry is a digital laggard. That's counterintuitive because property is our home, and for a lot of us, it's the #1 investment asset we own. In Australia, property is a national obsession. The total value of residential property is 4.5 times Australia's GDP. It's more than twice the ratio of that in the US and the UK. Sports betting companies in Australia let you gamble on the change in the house price every month. On any Saturday night, the number one topic of conversation is property. And one of Australia's most famous movies, The Castle, is about property too. In it, the main character, Daryl, repeats a line throughout the movie. It's not a house, it's a home. A man's home is his castle. So, if a man's home is his castle, and property is a national obsession in Australia, you're probably thinking we've solved most frictions. But that's wrong. There's multiple frictions for consumers, agents, and enterprises. Over the last 20 years, the Australian population has gone up 34%. But at the same time, the number of properties transacted every year has gone down by 17%. Why is that? It's due to frictions, primarily affordability and transaction costs. Consumers are worried about not finding their dream home. And once they find it, they're worried about overpaying because they feel like they're not armed with enough information to make a fully informed offer. Most agents do not use a data-driven, scalable approach to identify leads. They still drop pamphlets into letterboxes. 1 in 2 agents use pen and paper to manage campaigns and order their marketing schedules. It takes banks up to 40 days to approve a home loan, and when they do, 1 in 2 of those home loans will refinance within 5 years because banks struggle to predict and prevent churn. Some state governments also face frictions. They don't have timely land and property valuations. What happens there is it results in disputed tax amounts, manual investigations, and manual adjustments. It means tax collection and government departments are not working at peak efficiency. At Domain, our purpose is to inspire confidence in life's property decisions. Our purpose is broad. Yes, we're focused on solving consumer frictions or pain points, but we're also focused on solving broader frictions too. Our marketplace solutions look to solve those frictions for consumers, agents, and enterprise customers. Consumers. At Domain, our core business is our listings portal. We've launched many differentiated search features over time that look to reduce friction. It's why our app is rated 4.7 stars on the App Store. We've come up with innovative search features such as School Zone Search, which lets parents search for a home with their children's education front of mind. We've launched Map Finger Search, which lets you draw an area on a map and then search only in that specific area. And most recently, we've launched an innovative map-based search carousel, which fuses together the map view and the listings view, and then lets you toggle between properties without having to click into each one. We are personalising the experience at scale using AI. We're testing use cases such as automated segmentation and real-time personalisation to ensure that consumers have experiences tailored specifically to them. Why are we doing this? We're doing it because it creates value and it lets us drive a higher quality audience. So over the last 3 years, our audience that has transacted in a property has increased by 176%. What can we do next? After all, we tend to underestimate the effect of technology in the long term. Our personalised interaction with consumers and our ability to leverage AI means that we're exploring ways to surface the right solution to a consumer at the right time. At Domain, we're agent-friendly. We think agents play a critical role in the property market, and it's our role to support them. That is why, for every step of the agent journey, we offer a digital solution to help them run their businesses more efficiently and effectively. We also take a differentiated approach. We're building an open ecosystem with third-party integrations to give agents choice. We primarily help agents to firstly win the listing, manage the listing, and sell the listing. So first, win the listing. Our LeadScope predictive AI solution gives high-quality leads to agents. We leverage our unique data and AI capabilities. Then, our Price Finder solution arms agents with estimates, comparable sales, and insights so that they can have more rich conversations with vendors. And then when agents are ready to submit a proposal to vendors, they can do so with our Engage digital proposal tool. Engage delivers on-brand proposals within minutes, and it even notifies a real estate agent when a vendor's looking at the proposal so they can call them up and speak to them when it matters most. Secondly, we also help agents manage the listing. Our Realbase platform is the digital shopping cart in the real estate industry. Its platforms, RealHub and Campaign Track, let agents order anything they could want to market a property. That includes on-portal listings, signboards, brochures, digital marketing and newspaper advertising. Our HomePass solution lets agents digitally register buyers attending open homes. It also surfaces detailed profiles, so an agent can work out who is a genuine buyer and have more informed conversations. Third, we help agents to sell the listing. In addition to our listings portal offering, we offer social media campaigns on Meta and Google via our Social Boost and AIM platforms. And they're differentiated in two ways. Firstly, our first-party data means we can deliver personalised advertising that's got a much higher ROI than traditional channels. And secondly, our AIM platform automates the social media creation, distribution, and optimization process. 1 in 4 homes in Sydney and Melbourne that sell via auction. The reason is it delivers superior sales results, but auctions are more complex to manage for agents. Our bid tracker solution digitizes that auction process. Now, I'm going to do some future gazing. I've just talked through a range of agent solutions that we offer. How could we potentially use AI to transform those solutions to help agents in the long term? For example, with bid tracker. Bid tracker already collects tens of thousands of data points from auctions. Everything from buyer behavior, buyer bids, when the bid was made, how much it was made for, what the outcome was. So could we potentially use AI and bid tracker together in a live auction setting? In future, could we help auction markets clear more effectively, potentially making real-time recommendations to bidders on bid tactics, or vendors and the auctioneer in terms of how to run that auction? What is possible here? After all, we tend to underestimate the effect of technology in the long term. We also offer property data and insights to enterprise customers. Our unique property data and AI lets us generate nationwide automated property valuations. We commercialize those to banks, and banks use that to make better and more timely informed lending decisions. We're also serving some of Australia's leading banks with our AI-powered propensity to sell model. That's a model that predicts when people will move house and when they're going to churn their home loan. And it lets our banking partners better nurture those clients and also minimise churn and retain their home loans. Domain is the market leader for land valuation and analytics into government. Some state governments use Domain solutions to more efficiently collect land-based rates and taxes and determine them. This minimises the number of disputes and then also minimises the amount of manual adjustments and investigations needed. An important point for Domain's marketplace is that our solutions work better together. What that means is every solution needs to support the core business and other solutions in the marketplace. And to give some examples of how that works, I'm going to just talk through some of those enterprise solutions I just mentioned and where else across the marketplace they support our solutions. Firstly, our automated property valuations. They're also used to surface price discovery for consumers on our core listings portal. Our AI-powered propensity to sell model is not just used for banks, it's also used to give leads to real estate agents. And lastly, our land valuation and analytics services into government give us a voice on important topics, such as affordability and land value-based tax reform. Now, I'm going to change gears a little. I'm going to ask you 10 questions, and I want you to write it down, either on a piece of paper, your laptop, or your phone. Here's the important part. I want you to use your experience to provide a range. And that range, from a low number to a high number, has to give you a 90% probability that you've got the answer right. Now, what I'm not asking for is a range from 0 to infinity, because that's going to give you 100% probability, but a range that gives you a 90% probability of getting the answer right. The quiz is fast, so you're going to have to be quick. Is everyone ready? Question 1. How many completed pieces of music did Bach compose? Question 1, how many completed pieces of music did Bach compose? You've got to be quick, we're going to move on to question 2. How far does the ISS, so the International Space Station, travel in one day? How far does the ISS travel in one day? Question 3, how many islands does Indonesia have? I'm sure we've got some Indonesian participants here and they'll know the answer, but for the rest of us, how many islands does Indonesia have? Question 4, how many cells are there in an adult's body? Question 4, how many cells are there in an adult's body? Question 5, how many kilograms does an Airbus A380 weigh at takeoff? So question 5, how many kilograms does an Airbus A380 weigh at takeoff? Question 6, how many litres of methane gas does one cow emit every day? How many litres of methane gas does one cow emit every day? Question 7, what is the distance between the Earth and the Sun? So what is the distance between the Earth and the Sun? Question 8, approximately how many stars are there in our universe? How many stars are there in our universe? Question 9, how many times per day do Amazon engineers deploy code? Question 9, how many times a day do Amazon engineers deploy code? And finally, question 10, what percentage of land area in Egypt is desert? So last question, what is the percentage of land area in Egypt that is desert? Okay, now we're going to step through the answers, and I want you to be honest in marking it. Question 1, how many completed pieces of music did Bach compose? The answer is 1,127. Question 2, how far does the ISS travel in one day? It's 672,000 kilometres. Question 3, how many islands does Indonesia have? 17,508. Question 4, how many cells are there in an adult's body? The answer is 36 trillion. Question 5, how many kilograms does an Airbus A380 weigh at takeoff? The answer is 560,000 kilograms. Question 6, how many litres of methane gas does a cow emit every day? The answer is 400 litres. Question 7, what's the distance between the Earth and the Sun? It's 150 million kilometres. Now, if you didn't get that, question 8, approximately how many stars are there in our universe? It's 1 septillion, which is a 1 followed by 24 zeros. Question 9, how many times per day do Amazon engineers deploy code? The answer is 7,385. And then lastly, 96% of the land area in Egypt is desert. All right, we're going to see if we can find a winner. So I want you to stand up only if you have 3 answers or more correct. You've got to stand up. 3 answers or more correct. Everyone stand up. Without the use of ChatGPT, did anyone get 3 or more right? So we've got 1. How many did you get right? 4 right, but you did say a range, didn't you? I did say a range. Yep. 4 right. So a round of applause. We've got a winner. 4 right. Now, just with a show of hands, how many people in the room got at least 1 right? Okay, we've got about half the room. If that. I'm probably being generous. Now, at the start of this exercise, you were asked to use your experience to come up with an answer that gave you a 90% probability of getting the answer right. So over 10 questions, you should have got 9 out of 10. That should have been the average in the room. But the average in the room was 1 out of 10 if we're being generous. So where am I going with this? Why is the quiz relevant? Because it shows us that when we use our experience for what we genuinely do not know, right, they've sometimes been called the unknown unknowns, we tend to get it wrong. And we're at that point with the advancement of Gen AI. Gen AI is revolutionizing how we solve frictions and the magnitude to which we can solve them. We tend to underestimate the effect of technology in the long term. Even just a few years ago, I didn't expect to be standing here presenting a bunch of AI-generated slides. You may have noticed, apart from the photos of Fifth Avenue, every slide today was being generated by AI. We tend to underestimate the effect of technology in the long term. Now, in the 1980s, the US telco AT&T hired McKinsey, and they wanted McKinsey to predict the number of mobile phone subscribers in the year 2000. And McKinsey came up with a number, 900,000 subscribers. There was just one problem. They were off by more than 100 times. The actual number ended up being 109 million subscribers, and 10 years later it was 5 billion globally. We tend to underestimate the effect of technology in the long term. And it also happened in 1900, when the car completely revolutionized transportation. So what are the implications for us as leaders of our organizations? None of us wants to be the last horse on a street full of cars. But how many of us are willing to experiment and be that first car on a street full of horses? So just like Henry Ford changed ways of working with the production line, at Domain we're changing our ways of working to build the next-gen AI-powered marketplace. Our approach at Domain is to constantly experiment. We're testing and iterating incredibly quickly so that we move in lockstep with AI and its advancements and the opportunities it presents us to solve frictions for all the players across the ecosystem. And hopefully it'll let us avoid the trap of underestimating the effect of technology in the long term. Thank you.
Sev, thanks for that.
How did you go on the quiz, Simon?
Sorry, I actually got them all right because I did see your presentation beforehand. At least I'm not cheating with ChatGPT reading as we're going. That's cheating. Okay, would you consider getting into transactions? I'm going to ask a few questions.
So,
was that nod yes?
No, so that nod is, I think I understand the question, I'm going to clarify. So by getting into transactions, I think the question is getting at, and I see it's from Georg as well, so great question, Georg. I think that what the question is getting at is, are we looking at getting into the transactions and taking a slice of the agent commission, right? Effectively disintermediating the agent. And the answer is no. As I mentioned in the presentation, for us, we see agents as incredibly critical to the property market. They play a really important role. It's a transaction where you've got a buyer and a seller, and often you've got the buyer who wants to buy but isn't quite sure, and the seller wants to sell but isn't quite sure. And the oil to make that transaction happen is the agent. And I don't think that can be replaced, especially when we consider the value of what we're selling and how inexperienced people are. I mean, the average house gets sold every 7 to 10 years, right? People just aren't used to transacting and for such high stakes. So we think agents are absolutely critical, right? They play a really important role. And then we see our role not to disintermediate them. Our role is to support them. And so that's why we've gone and we've invested in a range of agent solutions to help them be more effective and efficient with their business.
I would argue that all portals are actually getting part of the commission anyway, because it's just going commission into the P&L of the agency, and then the marketing line comes out the other end, except for VPN.
It's an interesting question, right? But if we step back and say, how did it used to be in the time of newspapers? And I think the example is Australia, right, where roughly 1% of the sales price of a house went to the marketing, well, didn't just go to the marketing schedule, it went to the newspapers to advertise the property. And that's down by 90% or so these days with digital listings. So I take your point, but I think that trend has actually gone the other way over time.
Okay. Now, is the objective of Domain to beat REA or to be a highly profitable and growing number 2?
So that's a great question. I'd reframe it and say, whether we beat REA or whether we become a highly profitable growing number 2, I don't think our strategy changes. There's so many frictions across the consumer ecosystem, and it's our role to make sure that we're solving those frictions, right? So whether it's consumer frictions for agents, for enterprise, And the solutions we're working with, so that example I gave, right, where we've got a propensity model that we're working with banks, but actually it gives agents leads. That's really important for us in our core business. Or we're working on improving the quality of our property data and our AI that we use then to generate property valuations. That's really important for consumers on our core platform who go there. They want price discovery. They want to see what the price estimate of a property is and some detailed information, and we can provide that. And so for us, it's not a question of, do we try to become the number one or be a really profitable number two? It's our strategy is our strategy, and where that will take us may be a very profitable number two. Over time, it may be overtaking a number one. Although, with humility, I'll say overtaking a number one is incredibly difficult when we look across the last 2 decades on a global scale.
It doesn't happen too often. It does happen, but not too often. It sounds like Domain is doing a lot, like many products. How do you manage all the products and the sale of those products?
So it's a great question. We at Domain have evolved how we run our sales force over time. So our agent solutions sales team and our core listings business sales team have effectively merged together. So now we've got over 200 salespeople on the ground. And what they do is they work with their agent customer to understand their needs. So at times it might be a need around listings and what we can offer there. At other times they work with them, they see what frictions and pain points they have in their business, and they're also able to recommend what other agent solutions product might help them.
Okay. 2 other quick questions. You mentioned that you provide detailed profiles of possible buyers to agencies. How do you build those, and based on what data?
Yeah. So our property marketplace means that we've got several different solutions and we ingest data points with each of those solutions. For example, when buyers are on our core listings portal, every bit of that buyer behaviour is tracked. So we have millions of data points from different buyers across our portal. And then we're able to start building a profile in terms of who those buyers are, what they're after. There's also a range of other products that we offer where we also capture information. And so we're constantly using AI in a way where we can surface up the most relevant insights to agents.
Okay, and last question is it hard to compete or harder to compete as a number 2 in a vendor-paid advertising market?
I've never competed as a number 2 in a non-vendor paid advertising market, so I don't have the experience to answer it directly, but let me have a think about it, right? So I think whether it's a vendor paid market or not, vendor paid markets can help. But ultimately, what matters is what's the value you're providing to your customers. And so regardless of what type of market, if it's vendor paid or not vendor paid, it really becomes a question of, are you providing sufficient value? So in Australia, there's 2 portals that are ahead of the pack, right? There's a number 3 and a number 4 portal, but they're quite far behind. And the reason is when it comes down to it, the first 2 players, which is us and REA, we've got unique listings and we've got a unique audience. And at scale, which is very hard for the number 3 or number 4 to match. And I'd say, if you look at other parts of the world, if that is also true, if as a number 2 player or even a number 3 player, you're able to bring exclusive listings and an exclusive audience at scale, you're going to be relevant.
Yep. And it's interesting so a quick divergence here, 2 thoughts. It's interesting when you refer to something, not you, but in general it's referred to as number 2, because it depends on how you look at the territory for the definition. If you're looking at eastern suburbs Sydney, you'd say, no. Number 1 is you and number 2 is REA, right? It's actually flipped the other way. And then you'd say, where's the most expensive property in Australia? You go, eastern suburbs of Sydney. Then you go, where's the most spent on VPA? Eastern suburbs of Sydney. So in the most profitable market in the country, you're the leader. Right? And this is the interesting challenge about thinking about number 1, number 2 in any definition. It's just how far do you keep expanding? Then if you did New South Wales, you go, well, wait, let's go to Canberra, number 1 with all homes, and so on. So I think it's this definitional thing that's quite interesting. We just always think of our default view of the world is country.
It's a great point. It comes down to the granularity of markets, and as long as there's a sufficient TAM in one of those markets, you can have a niche offering and really do well.
Absolutely. I mean, Simon Bray happens to be my eyeline here. He doesn't compete all of Canada. It's just the western part, right? Basically British Columbia, okay? And that's where you lead the market. Do you care what happens at the other side of the country? No. Newfoundland? Where's that, right? It's a long way away. So I think that's an important way to think about it. And then the second comment I was going to make around this is I have a slightly different perspective. In a vendor-paid advertising market, where the money spent on the advertising in the eastern suburbs of Sydney or eastern suburbs of Melbourne is coming not out of the agent's pocket, but out of the vendor's pocket, and the agent is your salesperson, it is easier for them to sell a number 2 than it is for them to choose to spend the money from their own pocket on the number 2. So I think it actually creates the opportunity for Domain to be a $300 million revenue business at a 30% EBITDA margin. About right?
About a 35% EBITDA margin.
Sorry,
pretty close.
5% EBITDA margin. Give me a break, right? Anyway, so 300 million. So they're still making $100 million EBITDA each and every year as a number 2. I don't know too many other markets in the world where the number 2 player is that profitable. So, well done.
Thank you. As an interesting counter, though, if you look at Hemnet in Sweden, they're the clear number 1. It's a VPA market as well, but the number 2 is, light years behind.
Yeah, but you've got a 20-year head start. Remember, you did start before REA. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Simon.